Alright, so we're back with another video dealing with tips and tricks, and last one was Fallout 3, and today we are going over 5 tips that helped me with Resident Evil 4 VR, or the VR mode as it were. Yes, keep in mind, some of these tips can be transferable over to the Resident Evil 4 Remake, but these were things that helped me while playing the VR version. So some of these might only be useful in the VR version. So keep that in mind, and let's get on with the first tip, number 5. When possible, have the knife ready. Typically in the basic 2D flat version of Resident Evil 4 Remake, I wasn't really able to use the knife all that much because of the button layout. But when I'm actually using my 2 hands in VR, the knife becomes infinitely more usable and a helping tool, rather than in the first one where it was like, if your finger dexterity is good enough, then you can use it. And I wasn't really able to use the knife all that much. But in VR, having the knife ready in your offhand while aiming, you can swing it if you see anything getting thrown at you. And when I was playing the 2D version, I usually got hit at something being thrown at me, and in the VR version, I usually was able to deflect it because I had the knife at the ready. Or if something jumps out at you, you can stab it right away. It's really useful having the knife out when ready, and it's also very easy to pull out when you're in VR. Also, just a little bonus tip, try to upgrade to the primal knife as soon as possible. Yes, I understand you have to play through the campaign once because of all the little figurines are, all the way to the final level. You're not going to be able to find them all, but as soon as you get those all destroyed and the primal knife unlocked, you will then have a knife that actually is a little realistic in how long it lasts. So get that as soon as possible. And tip number 4 is reserve dual wield for the tougher enemies. One of the cool things about the VR version of Resident Evil 4 is you now can dual wield weapons at the same time. It is so insanely awesome, especially when you're going up against a large crowd of enemies. But you are going to want to try and save that stuff for when you're going up against a boss or the even more infuriatingly tougher chainsaw enemies. Like, seriously, save your magnum ammo and your shotgun ammo and just save all that for when the chainsaw enemies come at you, so you can unload both those at the same time into the chainsaw enemies, so you have a somewhat survivable chance in this game. Using dual wielding on a boss is very helpful and absolutely a must with some of the tougher sub enemies or the insanely overpowered chainsaw enemies. So definitely save it for that. And number 3 is weapon placement and optimization. These are key for a good experience. So what I mean by weapon placement and optimization is, in the menu, you can actually choose which holster on your body holds what weapon and piece of equipment. And sometimes you could just randomly throw stuff and you'll have guns in awkward positions. So I would recommend having the main weapons you use most, like the heavy use weapons, like your main pistol that you use for most encounters, have that on your hip. More specifically, the hip that is your primary site. So if you're a righty, have it on your right hip. If you're a lefty, have it on your left hip. And then on the other hip, I would have one of your other heavy use weapons, maybe the submachine gun, so that when you do decide to do a dual wield attack, you just grab that off your right hip or left hip and just unload on someone, and then you hang it back up. I also would have like the crossbow on one shoulder, and then I would have a rifle on the other. But just, it's going to be different for everyone, and you want to make sure that the optimization is to your liking. Play around with it. Take some time with the menu and figure out which weapon placement is going to work best for you, because trust me, in the long run, once you get that optimized, you're going to have a much better experience playing through this game. And then at number 2 is figure out your upgrade focus weapon. You're not going to be able to upgrade every single weapon and, gear in your first playthrough run. You're going to have to play through the game multiple times to be able to max out everything. So in your first playthrough run, choose like 1 or 2 items to fully max out upgrade, because once you have something upgraded fully maxed out, you're going to have a much easier time. I would recommend your main heavy duty pistol you're using through the bulk of the campaign. Max that out. Focus all your upgrade point cash into that one weapon, and then once you max it out, you can move on to maybe one of your other heavy use weapons. But that way you actually have an easier time, because if you just put stuff into everything, then you'll be a jack of all trades but a master of none. And then number 1 is the crossbow is your friend. Trust me, first time I was playing this game, I didn't really use the crossbow all that much, and then once I started really getting into the crossbow, it is such a huge help when trying to conserve ammo, because you can retrieve some of those bolts that you fire, and you'll want to make sure that you know what's behind the enemy you're shooting, because if you're shooting at an enemy on a cliff and you miss the enemy, then you lose that bolt forever. If there's a wall behind the enemy and you miss the enemy, you can collect that ammo still. So definitely, once you get the hang of the crossbow, it is going to be such a huge help to your overall experience, and plus it is going to really help conserve ammo. So keep that in mind. And then one final bonus tip: don't forget the shooting range, because 1, it helps with you improving on aiming, and then 2, the more you accomplish at the shooting range, the more keychains you unlock. And there's some really useful keychains that can really help you along your campaign progress. Some really high level keychains is just like, really, it gives me that, it like increases my movement speed. Like, okay, sure. So anyway, those were 5 tips that helped me with Resident Evil 4 VR. Hopefully these will help you guys out quite a bit, and say off in the comments down below if there are any other tips you think people should know about. But anyway, that's been 5 tips that have helped me with Resident Evil 4 VR. My name is Chris Rucon with 11 Hour Reviews, and that will be all for today.